Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. Love ya. Gonna be reacting to center-left coalition wins Norway. Is blah blah blah. I know very little about the politics of Norway. I know how legislation is, a decent amount, and that's why I'm a big, I don't know if I would say supporter or fan of Norway, but I like Norway a lot. They seem to do a lot of the right things. Whether it be left or right leaning. So anyway, we'll take a look, and if something's wrong here, please let me know. Any Norwegians that see this, because I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out.
This video is brought to you by TLDR Socials. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter. As what is a European super election year, Monday saw Norway's turn to take to the polls, and whilst the result isn't that unexpected, it is still a significant one that may cause headaches for some and jubilation for others, as a socialist, or at the very least left-wing, wave seems to be sweeping through Europe. So in this video, we'll take a look at what happened in Norway's elections, what it could mean for Norway, and whether Europe really is undergoing a socialist wave. To cut to the heart of the matter, Monday's election has seen the centre-left opposition thrust to power in what many are calling a landslide. Norway's Directorate of Elections projects the centre-left bloc, consisting of the Labour Party, the Centre Party, the Socialist Left, the Red Party and the Greens, to garner close to 100 seats, up from the 81 they hold currently, with the incumbent Conservatives down from 88 to just 70. Now this isn't actually that surprising. Polling prior to the election had put the Labour Party at least 5 points ahead, with coalition projections pointing towards the incumbent Conservative coalition being defeated by a 2-to-1 margin by the left bloc. In spite of a fairly strong and robust response to the virus, support for the Conservatives has slowly but surely collapsed over recent weeks and months, starting with the scandal over Solberg's 60th birthday bash contravening coronavirus restrictions, leading to the PM being fined just under €2,000, to a much wider concern over rising economic inequality, something we'll touch upon later. At the time,
didn't know about that. Unusual for normal for the rest of the world, a little unusual for Norway.
Of writing, we only had projections to deal with, but according to Reuters, if projections turn out to be correct, the centre-left will be able to form a coalition without turning to the extreme parties, notably the Marxist Red Party on the left and the Greens, which are anti-oil. A coalition of the remaining parties, Labour, the Centre Party and the Socialist Left, would be far from plain sailing, however, with two major issues likely to define coalition negotiations: Europe and energy. On the Europe front, Norway has one of the closest relationships with the European Union without actually being in it. Norway is a member state of the
Seems the way to go. Be good friends, but don't let them tell you what to do.
European Free Trade Association, the EFTA, alongside Iceland, Liechtenstein and Switzerland. Through a separate European Economic Area Agreement, 3 EFTA states, Iceland, Liechtenstein and Norway, are brought together with EU member states into a single market, the EU single market, sometimes referred to as the internal market. In practical terms, that means that the likes of Norway benefit from Europe's 4 freedoms: freedom of movement and goods, services, persons and capital, as well as cooperation on certain fronts without having to directly sign up to the broader customs union, the EU's common agriculture and fisheries policy, and the EU's economic and monetary union, the EMU. So far, so good. The issue here is that the likely coalition isn't set on the EEA. Labour is pro-EEA and Europe. The Socialist Left and Centre Party are not. Whilst Sture, Labour's leader and frontrunner to be PM, has consistently stated that the topic of EEA membership as well as NATO membership is a red line and untouchable in a coalition, that red line may have to become slightly more faint if he truly wishes to rule. Talking to Reuters, the Centre Party's leader highlighted that we believe we've handed too much authority to the EU, particularly within the area of energy, and that we should take that back. And this perspective is an immense softening of the Centre Party's position. In the past, it was the Centre Party policy to outright quit. Lisbakken, the Socialist Left's leader, whose party is also opposed to the current EEA, has realised that he can play the role of kingmaker in this coalition. Everything indicates that there is no way to power and a majority in the new parliament that does not go through us, and we will use that power. On the energy front, the Socialist Left oppose new oil exploration and want all oil production to end by 2035. Labour opposes any energy ultimatum, arguing that cooling time on our oil and gas industry is the wrong industrial policy and the wrong climate policy. In any case, Sture has stressed that we will take plenty of time to talk to the other parties, and we have respect for the fact that this has not been decided until it has been decided. It's likely going to be a number of days, if not weeks, before a fully fledged coalition is hammered out and policy agreed upon. But what's notable here is that there appears to be a solid resurgence of Europe's left. Towards the tail end of 2019, before the pandemic, many were heralding Europe's socialist collapse. At the time, Jeremy Corbyn's Labour Party had just been emphatically defeated by the Conservatives in the UK under Boris Johnson. The Social Democrats in Germany were polling at around 13%, behind the AfD on around 14%, the Greens on around 21%, and behind the CDU-CSU bloc on 28%. In subsequent months, as the pandemic hit, support for the CDU-CSU bloc rallied up to as high as 40%, more than double their traditional opponents. In France, as far back as 2017, Manuel Valls, the former socialist Prime Minister of France, declared his Socialist Party dead and gone. In the likes of Sweden, December 2019 saw the Swedish Democrats surpass the incumbent Social Democrats. That's all changed. Well, mostly. The UK's Labour Party, now under the leadership of Keir Starmer, is in some polls neck and neck with the Conservatives. In Germany, the Social Democrats are widely expected to win the upcoming federal election, unseating both Merkel, who is leaving the political stage after 16 years in power, as Chancellor, and the
I thought Merkel was fairly left-leaning. Anyway.
Conservatives as the largest party. Spain is being heralded as Europe's socialist torchbearer, in light of having growth forecasts for 2022 being the highest in the EU. And in Portugal, the Socialist Party has a 13-point lead over the centre-right Social Democratic Party. Ultimately, there is a clear driver of the left's growth, the pandemic. On one hand, the pandemic highlighted the vast disparities in European societies. As schools went online, for instance, discussions across Europe took place as to whether children had the right to resources, laptops, tablets, internet, a quiet place to study, and so on and so forth. On the other, the pandemic has removed the taboo of big government. Governments across the political spectrum spent the best part of 2020 and 2021 funneling billions into the economy. Furlough schemes spent millions upon millions each and every day, paying people to stay at home. Debt levels in more or less every European nation have increased. Government debt in the EU stood at 79.2% of GDP in the first quarter of 2020. A year later, provisional figures put debt at 92.9% of GDP. In absolute figures, an increase of 1.3 trillion euros. Having seen government spend and spend big for more than a year, people are less worried about big government and more concerned about rising inequalities if nothing is done. A poll conducted towards the tail end of 2020 showed an outright majority of Europeans wish to see the EU's budget as a whole expand in order to fight COVID, something likely to be reflected to an even greater extent on the national stage. Now, this is all conjecture, and it has yet to be seen whether opinion polls on government spending will actually come to reflect this. But what do you think? Will we see Norway's relationship with EU weaken?
Alright, the end of the video, last half was more talking about Europe than Norway, but anyway, it's clickbaity. Okay, one thing with all these countries is it's too bad because it seems very reflective of America in that there'll be one party elected, one group, coalition, if you will, and most governments are not good, so people become dissatisfied after a while, and they go, okay, we'll vote for the other one this time. And then they rule, they don't do very good, and then people go, okay, we'll vote for this one this time. They rule, don't very, it just goes back and forth forever. There is a positive in that it's not just one group leading without having to listen to the people, without having consequences. So it's positive in that they are being held accountable, maybe to some degree, but on the other hand, it could be just that the people are always dissatisfied because who's ever in power is just helping mostly the rich people and then doing very little for everybody else. That's how it is in America, and I'm guessing that's how it is in the rest of the world to varying degrees. In America, it's pretty bad. I'm guessing it's not so much in Norway, but apparently rising inequality seems like it's part of what's going on in Norway. I was going to say also, I think virtually anyone who is in charge during this pandemic would have done a bad job. So they would likely be voted out. I truly believe that if it hadn't happened, Trump would have been reelected by a lot. So, in the same vein, with all these other right-wing groups in Europe that they were talking about that were kicked out, I think they would have had a good chance of being reelected if the pandemic wouldn't have happened. People don't really care what's going on or how bad it, or excuse me, why. They just care about if things are good or not. And if they're not good, they're going to vote out the ruling party. I'm not saying they did a good or bad job. I'm just saying that's the way it is. I think if it were left-leaning, then people would probably vote them out and vote for right-leaning candidates. The thing that's unusual about Norway is that there are coalitions and groups that are working together. That can happen in America, but they're not formal coalitions. It'll just be like someone who's very far left, or I should say, someone who's moderately left might work with someone who's moderately right-leaning and just on certain things, but they wouldn't make a cohesive group. And they probably wouldn't be very outspoken about it. But anyway, somewhat interesting. Any comments, anything that got wrong in the video, anything that I need to know, maybe I said something wrong, let me know. Please, in the comments, appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe if you want. If not, that's fine. Have a good one. Take care.